My parents threw a massive, milestone surprise party for my golden child sister, and out of the 50 people invited, I was the only one who didn't get a text. When I saw the pictures online, my heart shattered. They claimed it was a mix-up, but we all knew the truth. Still, I took the high road. I sent a stunning gift, wrote a beautiful card, and signed it with love. I thought that was the end of my humiliation. But 3 weeks later, my phone buzzed. It was my sweet, usually quiet grandma. Her voice was trembling, entirely stripped of its usual warmth. She said, "Come over to my house right now, alone. And whatever you do, do not tell your mother." I had no idea that walking through her front door would unravel a decades-old family secret, completely flip the inheritance dynamics, and turn their smug smiles into pure terror. My name is Amber. I'm 26 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the ghost in my own family's home. My younger sister, Haley, was the golden child who could do no wrong, while I was simply the baseline she was measured against to prove how superior she was. I always tried to keep the peace, but 3 weeks ago, they took their casual cruelty to a whole new level. I was sitting on my couch on a Saturday evening when my Instagram feed suddenly exploded with notifications. I tapped on an autumn-themed story posted by my cousin, and my breath caught in my throat. There, under a massive banner that read, "Happy Golden 25th Birthday, Haley," was my entire extended family. 50 people were packed into my parents' beautifully decorated backyard, raising glasses of champagne, laughing, and cheering. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. My hands shook as I called my mother. When she finally answered, the loud music and chatter of the party faded slightly. "Oh, Amber," she gasped, her voice dripping with that patronizing, passive-aggressive tone I knew all too well. "Look, it completely slipped my mind. We were just so overwhelmed with the catering and the invitations. It was a total mix-up. You know how chaotic these things get. Don't be dramatic." A mix-up. They forgot their own eldest daughter. Instead of giving them the satisfaction of a tantrum, I chose the high road. I went online, bought an expensive designer handbag from Haley's public wish list, and mailed it to their house with a handwritten card that read, "With all my love, Amber." I thought that was the end of it. I had no idea it was just the beginning. 3 weeks passed after I mailed that package, and the silence from my family was absolutely deafening. No phone call from my mother, no text from my father, and not even a generic thank you message from Haley. It was as if my expensive gift and my very existence had been swallowed up by a black hole. I spent those 21 days fluctuating between deep sadness and a cold, numb acceptance. I told myself that this was just who they were, and I needed to stop expecting blood from a stone. I was prepared to let them go and focus entirely on building my own life far away from their toxic shadow. But then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, my phone began to buzz. I looked down at the screen, expecting another work notification, but my heart skipped a beat when I saw the caller ID. It was my grandmother. Grandma Clara was the fiercely independent, sharp-witted matriarch of our family, but she rarely called me out of the blue like this. When I pressed answer, the voice on the other end didn't sound like her at all. Her usual warm, energetic tone was completely gone, replaced by a low, trembling whisper that immediately sent a chill straight down my spine. "Amber," she said, skipping any sort of normal greeting. "I need you to come over to my apartment right now. Come alone. And whatever you do, do not tell your mother you are coming here." Before I could even ask her what was wrong, the line went dead. My hands were practically glued to the steering wheel during the entire 20-minute drive to Grandma Clara's apartment. When she opened the door, she looked older than her years, her face set in a grim line that I had never seen before. Without saying a word, she gestured for me to follow her into the kitchen. The apartment was quiet, but the air felt heavy with an unspoken anger. She walked straight over to the kitchen counter, opened a small wooden cabinet, and pulled out a pristine, white envelope. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized my own neat handwriting across the front. It was the gift card and shipping receipt for the designer handbag I had sent to Haley 3 weeks ago. It was completely unopened. I caught your mother hiding this in the back of her closet when I went over to help her organize last weekend, Grandma Clara said, her voice shaking with pure disgust. She told Haley that you completely ignored her milestone birthday because you were too selfish to care. She was using your absence to drive a permanent wedge between you two. I felt a physical wave of nausea wash over me as the sheer cruelty of my own mother's actions sank in. But Grandma wasn't finished. She leaned over the counter, her eyes flashing with a sudden, fierce determination. This pattern of exclusion and manipulation stops today, Amber. They are trying to erase you because they want me to sign over the entire family estate to Haley. Grandma Clara walked into her living room and returned with a thick, worn manila folder, setting it down heavily on the kitchen table right in front of me. Her hands hovered over the cardboard for a second before she flipped it open, revealing layers of official legal documents, bank statements, and notarized letters that bore my late grandfather's unmistakable, bold signature. Your grandfather was a brilliant man, Amber, and he saw exactly what your parents were turning into long before he passed away, Grandma said softly, her eyes turning misty as she pointed to a specific clause highlighted in yellow ink. He knew how deeply they favored Haley, and he knew they would try to leave you with absolutely nothing. That is why he set up a massive, protected trust fund and a property distribution plan that left the bulk of his commercial real estate assets directly to you. I stared at the pages, my eyes tracking the legal terms as my heart pounded against my ribs. I had spent years thinking my grandfather had simply forgotten about me in his final days, but the dates on these papers proved otherwise. He had signed them just weeks before his death. Your parents intercepted the original copies from the family lawyer's office after the funeral, Grandma continued, her voice hardening with an undercurrent of intense betrayal. They hid them away, and for the last year, they have been pressuring me to sign a heavily modified, fraudulent version of the will that strips you of everything. They think I'm too weak and too blind to see through their greed. Grandma Clara slowly closed the manila folder, her fingers tapping against the worn cardboard with a rhythm that felt almost like a countdown. She looked at me with an expression that was completely free of fear, replaced instead by the sharp, tactical mind that had kept our family business running for decades. They think they are so clever, she whispered, a cold smile playing on her lips. But they have underestimated both of us. And this Sunday, their little game comes to a crashing end. She leaned closer, detailing the trap that my parents had unwittingly walked into. My mother, father, and Haley had organized a grand Sunday dinner at Grandma's house under the guise of a peaceful family gathering. In reality, their family lawyer had already drafted the fraudulent paperwork, and they were planning to use the relaxed atmosphere to finally pressure Grandma into signing away my birthright forever. They had no idea that Grandma had already discovered their deception, and they certainly didn't know that I was sitting in her kitchen right now, looking at the evidence of their betrayal. I want you to act completely normal on Friday and Saturday, Amber, Grandma instructed, her voice steady and commanding. Do not answer their texts, but do not block them either. Let them believe you are at home, miserable and isolated from Haley's ongoing birthday celebrations. Then, on Sunday evening, I want you to drive over here. Do not knock and do not make a sound. Wait outside the dining room window until you see their lawyer place the inheritance documents on the table. That is your cue. You're going to walk through that front door unannounced, and we're going to show them exactly what happens when you try to erase family. Sunday evening arrived, and the atmosphere inside Grandma Clara's house was thick with anticipation. Peering through the dining room window, I watched my mother, father, and Haley sitting around the long mahogany table, their faces glowing with smug satisfaction. Their family lawyer, a slick man in a tailored gray suit, opened a leather briefcase and smoothly slid a stack of inheritance documents directly toward my grandmother. He handed her a gold pen, nodding encouragingly. This was the exact moment we had planned for. I turned the brass doorknob, stepped into the house, and walked straight into the dining room without making a sound. The transition in the room was instantaneous. My mother's smile vanished, her eyes widening in immediate fury as she slammed her wine glass onto the table. Amber? What on earth are you doing here? She hissed, standing up to block me. This is a private family matter. You weren't invited, and you need to leave right now. Haley smirked, leaning back in her chair, as if enjoying my public humiliation. But Grandma Clara didn't blink. She ignored my mother completely, picked up the gold pen, and signed the papers with a fierce, unwavering hand. She slid the document back across the table to the family lawyer. The smug smiles on my parents' faces lasted for about 3 seconds, until the lawyer adjusted his glasses and looked down at the signature page. I watched the color drain from his face as he turned completely pale, his hands visibly shaking. "What is it?" my father demanded, sensing the sudden shift. The lawyer looked up, his voice cracking. She didn't sign the property transfer. This is a legal affidavit initiating a criminal estate fraud investigation against you both. And she just placed 100% of the family assets into a protected trust, managed solely by Amber. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of the fraudulent paperwork fluttering as the lawyer dropped it onto the mahogany table. My mother collapsed back into her chair, her jaw slack with disbelief, while my father stared at me as if seeing a total stranger. Haley began to cry, realizing her golden child status couldn't save her from financial reality. Within months, the legal affidavit Grandma signed triggered a massive investigation that exposed my parents' systematic fraud, leaving them facing severe legal consequences and financial ruin. Haley was left with nothing, forced to finally face the real world without a silver spoon. Meanwhile, Grandma Clara and I moved forward together, completely cutting ties with their toxicity and transferring the family assets into a secure, thriving portfolio. We built a beautiful new chapter founded on truth, leaving our manipulative family to drown in the consequences of their own greed. What would you do if your family openly favored your sibling, or have you ever had to cut off toxic family members to protect yourself? Comment down below the city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled, and tell me, did my parents get exactly what they deserved? If you want to see how far poetic justice can really go, make sure to click on one of the 2 videos popping up on your screen right now. Trust me, they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until the very end.